The first piece is simply called Melodie, and we find here a melody in the right hand with the left hand providing a gentle babbling, if you will, accompaniment just in quavers against the melody in the right hand. Repeat. We should repeat. So what I do whenever I repeat anything is to try and find something different to say about it on the second time. It might be that I play it a little softer, it might be that I play it a bit more reflectively, or even just a bit more firmly. It's as long as we do something with it on the repeat, otherwise it just sounds a little tedious. So let's have a little look at this and see what's going on in this introductory phrase. The melody line, we obviously need to play it firmer than the accompaniment, melody accompaniment. So the composer writes piano, gentle, or soft, but often piano just tells us to be gentle. I would suggest that if we think of the right hand as being mezzo piano and the left hand as being pianissimo, if we add those two together, we come up with piano. So just a little bit more in the right hand and less in the left hand. So what counts as good sound in piano playing? Because we need this legato cantabile approach to the playing. It's a song after all. If you were to sing it, you'd find that you were stressing certain notes and shading off certain other notes. So it's not just a question of playing the right hand louder than the left. It's a question of shaping the right hand. So let's see how we might want to shape that right hand. Perhaps there's a micro diminuendo through the first bar as the material descends. And you'll notice what I'm doing in the second bar with those quavers, with the eighth notes. I'm not playing them evenly. I'm not doing this. Right? That's boring. That's kind of robotic. So what I am doing is, first of all, finding a physical movement that unifies them into a bowing, if you will, of the violin. This is one way of doing it. Do you see how I'm molding my arm into the shapes there? It's slightly rounded movement, sometimes called a wrist circle, this kind of idea, and that stops it from sounding syllabic. If I didn't do that, I'd get this sound. Not very attractive. And then, of course, the G at the end of the bar would be softer, end of phrase, and then I've got a jump of an octave. So I have to feel that stretch. When I say stretch, in the voice, so sing it, and you'll find if you were to sing an octave, it takes a little bit more effort than singing next door notes or a third. The higher up we go, the more effort is involved. Again, it's not so much a diminuendo toward the end of the phrase, but it's just a slight fading away, slightly, as it goes down. I think that's a good sound. Now, the left hand underpinning, if we look at that, we've got a line in quavers. You can hear I'm also shaping that, shading it, little rises and falls, some contours here and there. And when we get to the third bar, we've got a very typical pattern. Actually, it comes from the Baroque period right through the classical period, where we get a filler note in the middle of the texture here. If I play, let me just show it to you. See the G there in the thumb is really not very important. I could even miss it out. If I missed it out, I wouldn't get the flow. But let me show you without the G. And when I add the G, it just adds that little bit of flow. but I'm playing it very softly, that G, the thumb. So we could just practice the left hand by itself, stress the underneath fingers, and hide the G, and then he comes out of that idea. Now, before we put that together, I'd like to just look at bar 4, which poses a little bit of a challenge, especially with the composer's own fingering. If we look at this is why I like Urtext editions. They'll tell you, usually in italics, that this is the composer's fingering. 1, 3, 2, 1. Now, for a child's hand, especially a young child's hand, that's quite a tall order to cross over the thumb with 3 and 2. It puts my thumb at a slightly disadvantageous position. So what we could do is substitute 1 and then go to a 4 and then have 3, 2, 1. Okay, so another challenge for the child would be to balance the third here. We have an interval of a third, a minor third, F sharp A. The melody is on the top. So we have to really practice that so that we can play the A a little bit stronger than the F sharp. Difficult for a child, but not impossible. One thing we can do to practice that would be to play the A and the F sharp using 2 hands. The teacher could do this first, together. And now see if the right hand can copy that sound. Another thing you can do is to play the A ahead of the F sharp to get the tonal proportions, and see if you can get those closer together until you can synchronize them. It might take a little work to do that, but well worth the effort. The second phrase, and before I go on to the second phrase, we'll notice a modulation here into the dominant key, G major, which he doesn't stay in, he comes out of it immediately. And then back to what the first phrase. Let's look at that second phrase. Schumann quite often writes this indication. It's a hairpin, double hairpin, a crescendo and a diminuendo on one note. If we were violinists or clarinetists or singers, we'd be able to do that with a swell on the note. But of course on the piano we can't really do that. The only way we can realize it is first of all to imagine that swell. And what I needed to do to get the effect is just to take a little bit more time on it. If I do it without the time, now with the time, it's a moment of lingering. Similarly here, and definitely a diminuendo through the phrase. And what I would also do is to just notice in the left hand the shadowing. You've got a shadow of the main line in the underneath notes of the left hand, and then a little shape at the end of that bar. Give it shape, a little kind of swell on that as well. The F sharp is a lower neighbour, a chromatic lower neighbour. It's not a modulating note. We've already come out of G major. So if I go on to the end of the phrase, we've got a difficult bar, which we could possibly turn into a Q spot, bar 8. Let me show it to you slowly. Now the right hand divides up into 2 voices at the end of the bar. Let me show you right hand by itself. Substitute fingering there, 4 to 5. It's very nice. So to get the sound, the layering of the sound, I would recommend doing a similar type of practice to what we did in the 4th bar by temporarily allowing the left hand to play the alto. Maybe just these 3 notes, so that the student, or yourself if you're learning it, can hear the ideal sound. It's very easy for me to get the sound right if I use 2 hands, and then I can copy that sound with 1 hand. Back to 2 hands. Now one hand. Now you shouldn't, but at the end, you shouldn't really be able to hear any difference between the two-handed version and the one-handed version. So when I put that together, let me take it at a very slow tempo because I want to make sure I'm hearing everything and feeling everything. So the speed of no mistakes. And stop there. That would be the cue spot. If I were a very conscientious teacher, I'd ask my student to play that bar before allowing them to start at the beginning, just to make sure that they'd really got that. Let's go on. Bar 9 looks like it's going to start again like the beginning. We've just got an extra note in our alto. Now it's different, isn't it? The third bar of that phrase, bar 11, he jumps up yet higher. Do you remember the interval of the octave that we had at the beginning? Bar 3. So what does he do here? One higher. So that takes a little time. Just give it a bit of space. Again, we've got part writing in the right hand. Not easy, actually, this, for a child, for a young child, for a beginner. Again, you'll notice the finger substitution, 3 to 5, and then 4 to 2. So we practice that in the same way as we did before, remembering we can also play the top note ahead. We could even do that the other way around. And get that gradually closer together until we can synchronize. Right. We've had this before. A little time at the end just to relax. And you'll notice that as I'm playing and I get to the end of a phrase, I'm breathing. I need to allow the line to breathe. So a very beautiful piece where tone quality is vitally important right from the beginning of our journey in these pieces.